This is Success in Excess, where elite founders, lawyers, and clinic owners engineer success through strategy, scale, and systems. Powered by GrowthX.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Success in Excess, the podcast where high achievers, high performers, and high integrity firms share the systems behind their success. I'm your host, Tarun Singh, and today's episode is powered by GrowthX, America's #1 law firm marketing agency. And today's episode is here to bring you not only one of the powerhouses in personal injury law, but one of the best that has grown it nationally and has really hunkered down and been recognized all over the country as one of the top minds in the field. He has dominated the metrics all over Mississippi. His name is Patrick Wooten. He defines what it is to be a personal injury attorney. He's a former U.S. Army major, battle-tested strategist, and the managing partner of one of the most recognized injury firms across Mississippi, Richard Schwartz and Associates, home of the iconic One Call, That's All brand. From war zones to courtrooms to client care, Patrick has built a reputation grounded in discipline, leadership, and service. Let's unpack the mission, systems, and mindset that power his firm and has GrowthX in helping turn that mission into measurable momentum. Patrick, your story starts far from the courtroom. 24 years in Army National Guard, culminating as a major. What core lessons from military leadership have shaped how you lead your firm today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me on the podcast to start. So really excited. The military background that I have, not only my personal service, but actually my father was a career military officer. So since the day I was born, I was engrossed in that military culture, really gets to my leadership style and what I try to instill in the 140 team members we have at the firm. And so it's very simple. Every new hire I meet with, we have tenets, we have principles that our team has developed, but I've boiled it down to one simple expression, which is mission first, people always. And then I go in to explain that. We have a mission every single day, and that is to help people who have been injured in a motor vehicle accident, a slip and fall, a workers' compensation case, a mass tort case, Social Security disability. You have to come in to the office every single day mission focused to accomplish what is set before you. The people always part is twofold. It's one, the people within the confines of the 6 offices we have across Mississippi. You have to support your team member. We are all part of the same unit, all focused on the same mission. So that's really important that you are working with one another in a symbiotic nature to make sure we're achieving that mission. But the other thing is the people. It's really about the clients. There are 10,000 lawyers in Mississippi. There are some fabulous personal injury attorneys that don't work at Schwartz and Associates, who I'm very good friends with. However, I think we do it better than anyone else because of the people within our walls, the systems we have, the resources we have, but we can never lose sight. Every single day, you need to come in and be focused on our clients because they are priority #1. So that's the people always, that you can never forget about the people who put your trust and confidence in the law firm every single day.
So that strategy, obviously you can see you come from a military family. You kind of built out your system in such a way where there's hyper accountability within the team, within the structures, and within the structures of the structures. And, as a personal injury firm, you guys handle with very serious cases and serious matters that have life-changing effects, whether it be motor vehicle accidents, catastrophic deaths. These type of cases are not just a matter of crossing the letter of the law. It's more about impacting the devastation on families, and seeking justice beyond the tangibles, right? Some of these people are looking for getting different laws changed throughout the state to make sure that other people aren't victims. Many times the settlement is one of the, major focuses, but really they're reeling inside. And you as a firm owner and you guys running this firm successfully, that focus on people first is so important because realistically, and no disrespect to the other personal injury attorneys out there, but the stereotype of an ambulance chaser, I can tell you, I worked with over 50 different personal injury firms. In my years, we've generated over $100 million in results, and I have never met a personal injury attorney that owns his own firm that is going about it in such a way where it's classified as an ambulance chaser. You guys actually care about your clients. And I think the way that you present it in such a way really exemplifies why your firm, as of you becoming the acting CEO as of March 1st, the firm has been around for 44 years,
That's
correct?
correct.
We're COO, now the CEO. I think at this point, you guys are expanding to your sixth location in Greenville. You're not only the biggest personal injury firm by number of attorneys in the state of Mississippi, but by the number of cases and by raw revenue and settlements. You guys, in just a short period of time, not too short, but short enough to say, hey, you guys have literally dominated that whole state, that entire market, and really claimed it to be your own in such a magnificent way that you don't really see that often, right? It's those one-offs where maybe for every 1,000 personal injury firms, you find one just like yours. And that is why Richard Schwartz and Associates, that name rings bells. It holds, and if you tell anybody in Mississippi or the surrounding states, they know exactly who you guys are, what you represent, and the volume and the depth that you bring to the type of cases when when you're representing clients in that fact. Now, one of the things is, how did you transition from a military law JAG to personal injury law? And what was your initial motivation behind joining Richard Schwartz and Associates?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually did some insurance defense work for early on in my military career. So I was on the opposite side of the law. There's just one thing about representing billion-dollar insurance companies. They're about the bottom line. They're about putting profits ahead of people. So my story is, which is I love, is Richard randomly called me one day and said, I have an opening for an attorney, and an insurance adjuster told me to call you. I didn't know Richard. Richard didn't know me. So truly a cold call led to numerous conversations over a period of months. A lot of thought, prayer, and determination that ultimately led to me joining the law firm. And it's been a fabulous fit, ever since. But I do find it rather ironic that an insurance adjuster is the one who recommended me to Richard, their side of the fence to the side of truth and justice, as I say.
And would you have thought at that time when you spoke to Richard that you were going to be the CEO a few years later?
Yeah, it's been a heck of a ride that's there. We have wonderful people in this building, and absolutely appreciate the trust and confidence that he's put in me to make sure that we carry on the tradition and success of the law firm. But yeah, I have just achieved beyond my wildest dreams of being in the position where I am, and just the impact I can have on this firm, which then in turn leads to the people within these walls that has the impact on thousands upon thousands of Mississippians each and every year.
The impact that you speak of, we went over that a little bit earlier, but I can't stress it more about what a strong and successful personal injury firm, specifically a strong personal injury attorney, can make an effect on a family or a person's life if they truly fight for them. I'm assuming that your firm is the type of firm that does not bow down. You're not there for pre-lit. You're not there to try to settle and get out of there. And yes, there are certain cases where there's not always the battle, but you guys really focus on embodying that bulldog mentality where we're here to fight your case. We're here to fight for you. Hold your hand while we do it and make sure that you're taken care of to the best of our abilities, and not just say, hey, I'm going to get a quick check. Insurance company is going to cut out and we work the system. And that we can't even talk about how defining your success is, because at this point, the success that you've had is consistently growing. You're opening up new locations, you're hiring new attorneys. And even today in our earlier conversation, you say, hey, we're opening up a new location in Greenville. And right after that, you said, oh, yeah, we have a couple other locations that we're looking at, and then some next year. It's that growth mentality that you have it's just raw power directed in such a way that you're seeing amazing results. Now, was there a defining moment A case, a client, or even a challenge that made you truly realize, hey, this is my calling?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple that actually stand out to me in my 31 years of doing this. One is a terrible wrongful death case where the sweetest grandfather who had picked up a granddaughter from a piano lesson was hit by a commercial vehicle. He unfortunately succumbed to his injuries a week after the accident. The granddaughter suffered severe injuries, but it just sticks with me that she's in the vehicle seeing her grandfather just injured so severely. And just what we had to deal with the insurance company for that commercial vehicle and the battle we had to go through, not only for the widow. I mean, had been married for 50 plus years. I mean, it was sweetest love story of high school sweethearts that had been married forever, and unfortunately, almost in a blink of an eye, he was taken away from his loving wife, and then left adult children, left grandchildren. So that case always stuck with me. And then ultimately the recovery for the granddaughter in that case, because she suffered significant injuries, and I can only imagine as she grows up the things she thinks about, the events that her grandfather's not there for to be able to see, because they had an amazingly close relationship. So that absolutely has just stuck with me. And that happened a number of years ago. That was pretty early in my tenure here at Schwartz and Associates. So it's that case, and just knowing just the blink of an eye, an absolutely catastrophic accident can happen, and getting to know the widow and getting to know his adult children and getting to know his granddaughter has just always stuck with me, that you need to cherish the people in your life. It's really important that you cherish the people in
Amen.
your life, because you never know when the Lord is gonna, take you home, when your time's gonna end here on the earth. And then as an attorney, that family was just grieving. I mean, it was just so out of the blue, absolutely grieving. So you had to realize, and that gets back to people always, that these are human beings that are calling you at one of the lowest points in their life. So you don't always just need to be preaching the law to them. It says you're an attorney and counselor. So you're there to walk hand in hand with them to help them get through the legal minefield, to come out on the other side to get the justice that they deserve for these terrible accidents.
Well said. And I mean, you couldn't have said it better. I mean, a family destroyed, multiple generations disrupted in a blink of an eye. Granddaughter, obviously the gentleman's son, his kids, son-in-law, daughter-in-laws, and then his wife. Love story like that, where it started so beautiful from the beginning and ended so tragically, without warrant, without cause, without notification. And then, obviously having to see your grandfather suffer like that, I can see why a case like that would sit with you. Now, I love this part. Not the one call, that's all. It's one of the most recognizable slogans in personal injury
It
law.
is.
But behind this slogan is substance.
Uh-huh.
How have you maintained that trust, the integrity, and such a competitive push forward in such a high noise legal market?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I do love our slogan, one call, that's all. It only takes one call to get started on your case. But again, if you don't have the follow up, that's instilling the mission in your team. That gets to the mission first people always, that they understand the mission every day. If they're not following through on the mission, then you're going to have a client who is rightfully perturbed because either their calls aren't being returned, or the case isn't being worked in a timely fashion. Or a big thing is educating. That's the one thing as an attorney, we have a job to educate our clients. They may not understand, especially in Mississippi, where unfortunately we have a cap and have had a cap on non-economic damages for more than 2 decades, that there's cases where we have to explain how the cap comes into play, or how does it come into play that there's a lien that you have to pay back a health insurance carrier because they paid medical bills. So all of that ties into yeah, we love that phone rings. The potential client made that one call. We established that attorney-client relationship, but it's like a relay race. They've run the first leg. They ran the first leg, and they've handed us the baton. And at that point, it's our team that's running the rest of the race to be able to get to the finish line on behalf of that client. And if you drop the baton anywhere in that relay race, you're not going to be successful, and you're going to lose the race. You're going to likely lose the client, and you've just destroyed, as you've said, for us, 44 years of trust and confidence of the general public in Mississippi.
Your growth has expanded all across Mississippi. We just talked about the new location in Greenville, but there's also Tupelo, Hattiesburg, Columbus. What role has your digital marketing strategies played in the expansion of the firm?
That's a great question. I laughed. You must have been had my office bug torn earlier today because I was literally joking with somebody. 8 years ago, which is not that much time, we were still in the yellow pages, spending an unbelievable amount of money in the yellow pages, six figures, because Mississippi is a rural state, and so that was a big thing. People still got the yellow pages. We had the magnet on the front, we were on the back cover, it was there. But then it has switched. Digital advertising has literally made the yellow pages the way of the dodo bird. No one gets the yellow pages anymore. And now we're spending six figures on digital marketing. It is, if you're not in the digital playing field, you're not in the playing field. You really aren't even in the arena with the rest of the personal injury attorneys because you have to be Google, Yelp, Bing. I mean, all those you have to be appearing because that is where everyone goes. It doesn't matter if you're going to a new restaurant, if you're buying a new car, if you're buying a house, if you're going to the beach. If you're hiring a law firm, what are you going to do? You're going to jump online. You're going to look up their reviews. You're going to see where their offices are. What kind of cases do they handle? So the digital age has been the springboard for us, which has allowed us to expand to the multiple locations across Mississippi, and that will continue to lead to the expansion in other areas within the state.
You talked about that yellow pages. Well, nowadays people use them kind of like what's a like a door stopper. But okay, so digital marketing has taken over when it comes to pretty much every industry in the legal field and pretty much every industry on earth at this point, especially with AI. A lot of people, and I've been looking at Richard Schwartz, and I've been looking at some of your campaigns and looking at guys how you guys have seen that expansion. And it seems that you guys have a very strong foundational approach where it's not just really quick fad campaigns where you see a lot of firms nowadays. You guys have stuck with that one call, that's all type of thing. Where most firms, they try so many different slogans that may or may not work that nothing really sticks. And you've been able to really make that stick and not only build it as a brand, but build it as a slogan that people recognize. It's kind of like Nike. I can say just do it, and somebody will say, "Hey, Nike." And then same thing, they can say your slogan and instantly they recognize what that is and what it represents, and that represents Richard Schwartz. Now, I tell a lot of potential clients and clients that I have when I'm talking about legal marketing, personal injury is very different than any other form of law practice because the way that you market is really focusing on that brand stickability. Is it sticky? Does it stick in your brain? Does it burn an image, a thought in your brain where, hey, if I got in a car accident, I'm going to call Richard Schwartz. One call, that's all. If I'm dealing with the situation, who do I think of? Because in those moments, those generally are going to be the firms that get the most traction because unlike, criminal defense, it's a very urgent aspect. You gotta be on the ball. It's gotta be there right then and there. Maybe somebody needs to be bailed out at 2 in the morning, or somebody got an unexpected arrest, and it could be God knows, could be in a different state, different county, something, they're just driving down the street. Where personal injury, that's why they have the bus ads, the billboards. It's not because those bus ads or billboards generate specific leads where people see the billboard and they call it. It's because it ingrains in their memory bank who Richard Schwartz is, what does this firm do, and how can they help me? So when they do unfortunately get in a sticky situation, such as a car accident or they got injured or something of that nature, what we find at that point is that memory instantly pulls what you guys have literally spent years to establish. Amazing. And I think you guys are very on point with it. And you recognize digital marketing is the way to go in this day and age. Everything has its time and place, and that is the king of the hill right now. Has there been any moments when doing the right thing, doing right by your clients, doing right by your team, and actually just following what the system says has not worked out? Or in the same instance, where something that was a mistake actually turned out to pay out long dividends?
Yeah, I mean, you always want to do the right thing. I mean, I think that's really important. You get the occasional client that you have worked your tail off on, the team's worked their tail off on. It may have been a case of disputed liability and you got the decision overturned so that the adverse insurance accepts it. And then you ultimately get to demand when you relay the offer to the client and then the client turns around and disengages the firm because they want to take the whole thing. At that point, they don't want to pay the attorney's fees. So you get that where it's like you do all the work. You literally are to the finish line and then it's the old Lucy and Charlie Brown. Lucy pulls the football away from Charlie Brown, and she goes fine. It's fine. So that happens. I mean, that's going to happen. It's happened with us. It's going to happen with every law firm. That's frustrating because the team has done everything right, and then at the end, that client pulls the football away because they've determined they don't want to pay a fee. It is what it is. You just deal with it and adapt and overcome. I mean, there are times that, yeah, you've had cases to where it seems to have gone south early on a case. Either the client gives a terrible recorded statement or does a terrible deposition, and you just really think the case has gone south, or the doctor, the treating physician, gives a less than stellar deposition. I've lived that before. But because you have done your prior preparation in that case intimately, you're able to overcome those hurdles. There's no perfect case, Torn. There's no perfect personal injury case. No matter what the facts are, the insurance company, the insurance defense lawyer is going to try to find some blemish somewhere so that they can ultimately argue to reduce the value of that case. So that's where the key is. When you get hit with those blemishes, have you prepared properly so that you're able to apply that acne medicine and make that blemish go away, or make that blemish become smaller so that you don't negatively impact the value of your case?
And with that, where we look at actions, sometimes will have short-term costs but pay out in the long term. And that's where, you do what you have to do for the client. You treat them with respect. You work your butt off for them. Your team works their butt off for them. And sometimes it doesn't work out. But the reality is this: that position that you set, those principles you guys stood by, is the reason why the firm has expanded so much. Because yes, every now and then you may get a client that's difficult. You may get a case that you can't win it. I mean, think about baseball. Everybody, bats 1,000. Even the guys making hundreds of $1 million a year, they're batting, 300, 350, and they're the best of the best of the best. So people have to understand that, you know, no matter what, and this is where we get into the whole ethics of it. We do the marketing, you handle marketing for your law firm, right? But there's a fine line between standing out and selling out. Now, how do you market ethically, yet at the same time effectively without crossing those boundaries and principles that you're setting?
Yeah, that's a great question because I do laugh. In my time here, there used to be three television advertisers when I started at the firm. Just in Jackson, which is the main market in the state of Mississippi, there's 17 to 18 television marketers at any one time. So, I mean, it's grown, think about sixfold. That doesn't even begin to talk about the digital advertisers, which I know you all specialize in. I mean, there are of those folks out there, and you still have billboards and you have radio and all that. I think the key for us, and you hit the nail on the head, is we have always been consistent with one call, that's all. I love it when we have a client who's now 35 years old and will call us and they're like, I grew up. I remember watching these commercials since I was a kid. One call, that's all. They say the jingle and it's perfect. They say the slogan, it works out. But again, it's not just the slogan. It's you have to have the wherewithal and the standing behind the slogan. And that's where it's been the people that we have had at this firm for 44 years. Because we could have the greatest slogan. If Nike had just do it, but yet their shoes fell apart the first time you wore them, the slogan would have been meaningless. Yeah, they would have had a lot of first time buyers, but they never would have had a second time buyer. I love it. I've had one guy that I have represented 7 times. Now, I joke with him, I'm never going to get in a car with him. I will never let him drive me anywhere, but he's had 7 accidents that have never been his fault. Thankfully, they've all been relatively minor, but we treated him right the first time. And so every subsequent wreck over the next, 15 years, he called us back. He called us the first time literally because of his slogan. Because I asked him, I said, "Why'd you call us?" He goes, "Grew up with one call, that's all. You were who I knew.
Mhm.
You were the firm that I immediately thought of." And then we treated him right. And so down the road, when he had other instances, he continued to call us back. So that is the key to everything, is consistency and to being able to outperform the expectations of your client. You have to be able to outperform the expectations. That doesn't mean you're going to get them the money that they want. Everyone wants a lot of money. We live in a society where people want a lot of money. But if you have been able to educate them, to explain to them the law, you explain to them the value of the case, and at the end of the day, let's say you said, "Hey, Torrin, your case is worth $20,000." And we get to the end of settlement, and I'm like, "Torrin, I got you a $25,000 settlement offer. I have outperformed what I have hopefully ingrained in you that's there." What you don't want to do is say, "Hey, Torrin, your case is worth $50,000, $50,000. And then you get to the end, you're like, "Yep, here's your offer. It's $25,000. You've completely confused your client. You've lost their trust. And clearly you didn't know the value of your case. And not every case is a 7-figure case. There's cases that are worth a few $1,000s. Yeah, there's cases that are worth millions of dollars. But I tell my client, I really hope they don't have $1 million case, because those are the cases where the injuries are catastrophic. They're never going to be able to work again a day in their lives. Their lives have been forever changed, and they're not going to be able to be the same as they were before the accident happened. Let me give you a few $1,000s, because thankfully, you got great medical care. You recovered from your injury. You're able to go on. You're going to be able to go to your kids' soccer games. You're going to be able to go to cheer practice. You're going to watch your sons or daughters get married someday. You're going to have the career you want. I'll trade those cases and give those to those folks every single day over a case where I have the widow of 50 years who lost her husband basically in a blow.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Why, if I had a choice, so actually, I would choose never to have an
Right.
injury, but people
And
would
you
say,
are. That's the crazy thing. Stats say you're going to have an accident sometime in your life.
you will. Statistically, you're going to have an accident, whether it's your fault or not your fault. And at that point, like the gentleman that said, "Hey, I grew up listening to the slogan," that is the whole premise. And actually, it's the perfect example of a personal injury doing what they're supposed to do successfully. Because when you have that type of traction, right, even though it's one simple reference of a person, it's showing that now that gentleman got in a car accident. He didn't have to research anything. And if he did, it was maybe to find the phone number. But he knew who he was looking for. The intent was there. And you spent years and years building that foundational presence in Mississippi, building out your brand, building out the integrity of the firm. So now, 35 years later, the firm's been around for 44 years. You guys are now a household name in the state of Mississippi. And that's where we see, if you understand the concepts of SEO versus paid ads, right? Paid ads are very linear, right? You put 10,000 in, you get 50, $60,000 back. You put 20,000 in, you get $120,000 back. But in the SEO parameters, right, you're building that foundational presence and that exponential growth snowballs. And now, as that continues to snowball, you don't need to generally there are firms that only pay ads to generate clients, where now you guys have built that strong foundation where organically, if somebody's in a crisis, they have an injury, they're in a car accident, slip and fall, whatever it may be, right? At that point, their intent is going straight to Richard Schwartz. And if they don't know the phone number, they may look it up there. But at that point, that's that organic generation. And it's just like Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola doesn't have to sell you. They don't have to put a commercial for you to say, "Hey, I'm going to get a Coke." If you're thirsty, you go get a Coke, and exactly what you're looking for, why you're looking for it. And they're not, yes, they make more money off of advertisements, but it all adds into the multiple revenue streams, which is now taking the firm from step A to step B, all the way down the alphabet to the success where you guys see today. Now, you mentioned one of the things, like local television marketing, right? It was a thing being on like a WUSA 9 or something of that nature. Nowadays, we've seen so much success with streaming,
Uh-huh.
with Hulu ads, Roku ads, Disney Plus, things of that nature, because we're seeing that more and more people nowadays are the whole Netflix and chill and hanging out at home and watching the TV. It's easier to watch a movie at home. I mean, sometimes it's even cheaper. I can sit on my couch on my big screen and watch the brand new movie, eat the best food I want, be very comfortable. And I don't have to go spend $50 a ticket at the movie theater and be cramped. But with that, we're seeing the traction rates grow exponentially, especially in personal injury, because you made it an amazing point. And obviously, it's like the back of your hand. Personal injury is about having a very large net, and in that net, you're going to have cases that range from a couple thousand to 20, 30,000 to a couple 100,000. And then in that net, with those hundreds and maybe thousands of cases, you'll find a few little gems, which are your multi-million dollar case here, a couple of $1 million cases here. And those multi-million dollar cases is what really is the driving functionality for the rest of the cases, because now you see your exponential rate of return just skyrocket. Because let's say if you're averaging, I don't know, let's say you spend $100,000, and we'll just use a rough number. And let's say you're spending $10 to get every lead, not a qualified lead, just a lead, right? So you have 1,000 leads. Well, if those 1,000 leads are generally, let's say you convert, maybe let's say only 40% of them are viable cases, right? So now you're at 400. And let's say of that 400, let's say majority, 90% are all cases under 20,000, right? Now you have a number where 40 of them are over that number, and then break it down from there. Maybe half a percent, maybe 1% could be multi-million dollar cases. Now you're talking about four multi-million dollar cases. And then if you look at the cost on the return, well, let's say if you get one $5 million case and you're doing an average of, let's say, 33%, 35% contingency fee. I mean, that just one case alone will cover all the costs, not including how much you made on the other cases, and you're already looking at a 35x. And that's why I come to an important question to you on what is your thought in private equity in personal injury firms? Because nowadays, you guys, I mean, let's be honest, you guys are killing the game. The return on investment for personal injury is so high that you have lots of private equity firms coming in, and they're trying to figure out, you know, I know there's usually black letter law stopping them from, owning the firm and investing in the firm, but they're trying to change that now. What's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, Arizona's got that for sure, and you've got a lot of alternative business structure arrangements out there. Again, the whole practice of law is changing. Think about it. It was the U.S. Supreme Court case in the early 70s, which allowed lawyers to advertise on TV. So if you're not constantly evolving and adapting, you're going to be left behind. So understandably so with private equity, it's gonna come. I think it's very important because the practice of law is a very nuanced area. So I think it's important. You're going to have guardrails. Can't just be the wild, wild west where, you get the biggest spender can just dump a bunch of money in there and flood the market. You have to have attorneys who understand. And they need to always get back to the fact that, especially in PIs, people that are coming to you one of the lowest points in their life, following an accident. So they're physically hurting, they're mentally hurting, they're emotionally hurting, they're definitely financially hurting. So you can't lose that aspect of the law if private equity gets allowed to enter into the space unregulated. So there's got to be those guardrails. It's going to come. I know it's been successful in Arizona. I mean, I know other states still have a ban on it, so I think it's still down the road a ways before we ever see it nationwide. But it's like everything. Self-driving cars was a concern of injuries, and as we've seen, unfortunately, that technology's not there yet on those. So there's things that you have to be cognizant of if you don't have your eyes open to the future. AI is a big area right now that's really changing the dynamics of law firms. You're gonna be left behind. So private equity is just one of those things where you have to do your research. You have to understand how it fits in the space. But again, it's just going to be one piece of the puzzle. It can't take over the whole puzzle. It can just be one piece that fits in with, for example, a law firm of our nature that's already there. And because of the history and the tradition and the knowledge that we have allows us to continue to go represent, folks every single day and fight for them and fight for their justice.
You know, You said in 1970s, Supreme Court allowed law firms to advertise, right? I was recently working with a client in Turkey. They're an international law firm. They're based in UK. They handle big transactions with oil companies and international import export. And the one thing when we were working with them in Turkey and a lot of countries in the EU, they actually still ban any advertisement of law firms specifically because I feel that it takes the integrity away from an industry that should be based on, or generally is thought to be based on integrity. And with that, we look at the transition into AI. I know recently I read an article a few years ago by Goldman Sachs, and they brought up, a very interesting topic. And they said AI is taking the world by storm, but there's one industry that is going to be most affected by AI, and they clearly stated that it was the legal industry because right now, you can use AI to do a lot of things that can give you surface level knowledge. Like it can write a contract for you, right? And it can look good. But you don't really hire an attorney to write a contract for you. You hire an attorney to understand the protections of that contract. So it's written in such a way where if something were to happen, to foresee things. And that's kind of the thing you don't see. So when it comes to briefs, medical experts, any of the documents that you guys handle in personal injury that can be done by AI, yes, it's a good typewriter, and that's pretty much what it is. Maybe it can give you some reference points, but your ability to interpret that data and use that data and have it be portrayed in such a way that pulls at the heartstrings of the juries, that lets people understand, hey, these are punitive damages. These are the intangibles that are going to affect this individual's life. And this is why we feel it's this valuable. These are the real reasons why I think AI is great in the legal industry, but it will never, ever, in my opinion, guys, my opinion, so nobody get mad, but in my opinion, you cannot substitute a human attorney that understands because, like you said earlier, right? They are the counsel, right? They're called counselors. They're here to counsel you. They're here to represent you. They're here to protect you, and they're here for your best interest. And statistically, an AI bot may be the first. It'll look at risk and reward, and it'll look at the percentages of what's the likeliness of closing this case and getting a big deal. And probably every time it's going to go the risk averse safe route and say, hey, even though you, right, Patrick, you're a skilled attorney, you're a litigator, you're a trial attorney, you've done this in and out, and you can look at a case and insurance company may offer you 50,000 and you look at the ins and out of the case, look at the deposition and say, hey, I think this is $1 million plus case. No AI is going to be able to identify that because it doesn't have intuition, it doesn't have feeling, and it doesn't take risk, nor does it have faith. What's your take on AI and how is it applying to your current
Yeah,
firm and its growth?
great question. I mean, AI, and it's funny, I had a conversation with an AI vendor earlier today, and as I told them, it's a tool. It's simply going to be a tool. It's another arrow in your quiver. It's back to when I started law school. We still went to the law library. We were still grabbing the books off of the shelves is where we were looking up cases and so forth. Well, no, now you have Westlaw and you have LexisNexis. I mean, those have replaced all the books. So it's a tool. It's easier to have that information at your fingertips. AI is great. I mean, it's a tool. Plug in the deposition that the defense took of our client. Give me a synopsis. Identify all the references where our client talked about pre-existing injuries and so forth. So it's a great tool to make the attorney more efficient, to make the paralegal more efficient, to make the legal assistant more efficient, but it doesn't replace the human being. AI at this point is not going to choose the jury. I mean, you're going to know, you're going to be able to see, is that potential juror making eye contact with you during voir dire? Are they smirking at something you said? Are they nodding their head in agreement as you're making comments and asking those questions during voir dire? So that's, AI is great. It's crazy how quickly it is evolving in the tools that it can be. But again, it's just one piece of the puzzle. It's not the whole puzzle. It does not replace the human being. It doesn't replace the actual experience. It doesn't replace the negotiating with an adjuster to be able to talk about those golden nuggets that you pull out of a case because the grandmother who's always cooked Thanksgiving dinner was unable to host her family for Thanksgiving this year because of the injury she sustained in the accident. Those are things that a human being has to be able to find and be able to relay to the insurance company to be able to create the whole picture for them as to how this accident impacted another human being and why the case is worth X and not worth I of what the insurance company's wanting to offer.
You're right. It's a tool. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel. And you're in the business of, I mean, I don't want to say you're in the business of feelings, but you are kind of in the business of feelings and trying to figure out what the value point is for those hurt feelings, the hurt emotions, the physical damages, the emotional, the mental, the existential damages on the family, and how everything kind of relates out. Now, we've gone over this a couple of times. The firm is expanding at such a rapid pace. I'm assuming you guys are doing SEO and you guys are doing ad metrics, you guys are doing social media. Where would you say, let's say if we're talking to a young firm owner that's starting his own PI practice, cash flow is a little tight, right? And he had an option. What direction would you say if he had to pick two metrics or one metric where, hey, you got 6 months to grow your firm. The goal is to make sure intake is solid. Most of the time, these young attorneys are picking up their own phone calls and handling with the cases coming in. But would it be, what is it, SEO? Is it social media content? Is it PPC? Where do you think would put them in the best position if they're starting out bootstrap and they really want to see some success?
I'm going to give you three. Two that cost money and one that doesn't cost any money. So we'll first go to the free. The first free one is if you're a kid who's out starting their own firm. You've graduated from law school. Let's say you worked for a firm for a while and you're ready to go be your own boss. You have to leverage the relationships you have. Best example is I had lunch last week with a young lawyer who's been out of law school 3 years. He worked for a firm for a while and then wanted to go start his own personal injury firm and was asking for advice, for guidance. Hey, what are thoughts you can share? He was saying, hey, if you've got cases that don't fit the firm's criteria, would you think about me? So it's like establishing those human interactions. That's the key. Lawyers are a pretty tight knit community. As long as you don't burn bridges and you're a man or woman of your word and you treat everyone with respect, we will all bend over backwards to help each other because those people are out there helping. So you got to establish relationships. That's your freebie. SEO is vitally important. You have to have a website that is going to draw people to it. At the end of the day, if you don't
100%.
have that, people really don't think you're legit. You have to have a website. It has to not look like it was created by middle schoolers that were doing a middle school project. It's got to be you. You have to personalize yourself. You have to talk about yourself, but you have to talk about what you do. So SEO, you got to spend the money on SEO without a doubt. The other thing is you've got to have an online presence. I mean, it's organic is great. And organic, I think, is so important. And that gets to you as a human being, that gets to the SEO. But if you've got a few nickels to spare, it's helpful to be in the playing field of potentially being in a PPC environment. TV is going to be way too expensive for somebody. It's not worth it for you to be able to be like, oh my gosh, I have one commercial a day going. Well, you're going to be swallowed up by everyone else and you just become white noise. It's not going to be memorable. Radio's the same way. There are firms that, dump just a whole bunch of money into radio. Billboards we have billboards and I think billboards work great for us because guess what? People know who we are. I get it. If
Exactly.
you are a small town lawyer and you're in a town where there's only a couple billboards and you can put one up there, it would likely work. That would probably work for you in a small town environment. But if you're in the Jackson metro area or the Tupelo metro area or Hattiesburg, where there are tons of roads and tons of billboards, again, your one billboard is likely just going to become white noise and swallowed by everyone else. So that's where the key ends up being. Do the freak me,
Yes.
call an attorney, that reach out to a firm that's been around for a while and just ask to go to lunch and just pick their brain, learn from them. I do that now. We're in mastermind groups and I have conversations with law firms from across the country and learn from them from every meeting that I have because there's things that I don't know. You never want to be the smartest person in the room. You always want to be learning from other people but then you've got to get with a company that knows SEO inside and out and is going to build your website and be able to put out the content so that when someone does that search of, you know, car wreck lawyer near me, car wreck lawyer X town, you're going to populate, and you hopefully will populate. You want to populate on the first page there when it comes to organic search. So that's really important. And then I'd say, secondly, it would be if you're spending money on PPC, if you got a few nickels to spare.
And that's such amazing insight because SEO, and I've personally been doing SEO for 15 years, and the playing field, just like the legal world, has changed so much. Google does updates every single couple of months. They change how the algorithms
Yeah.
work. And the reason for that is to keep people on their toes because if you're investing in your business and you're attentive and you're updating, it shows that this is an active, successful business, and it allows that trust factor for Google and the search engines to send people to you and rank your keywords because at the end of the day, it's just, hey, these guys are active. You have websites that I know attorneys that have built websites and it's been 20 years now. They've never had a blog, never had no content. And they're like, oh, the website doesn't work. Well, it only works if you work it. And the same thing goes with paid ads. Like understand your metrics and your market. LSAs are great. They're a little bit expensive. You get low volume, but you get higher conversion. And if you leverage that in a good growth cycle with PPC, you can find yourself in a very good position. And what we've done, and I've seen quite some success with it, is obviously launching streaming ads because just the other day I was meeting a client and his Meta ads were costing more than the per milli for Hulu streaming. He was spending $35 per milli, which is per thousand impressions. And you can go on Hulu right now and run campaigns and get anywhere between $20 to $30 per impression, per thousand impression views on a television that will track to their IP address on their phone. And it's evolving. You can't and I think I would tell anybody in this situation, it's not that it doesn't work. It's that the person that you've selected probably doesn't know how to work it. And that's what you have to be absolutely you have to scrutinize everything. I'm telling a law firm how to pick a marketing agency, especially if they're looking for SEO or PPC, you got to scrutinize. You got to ask them the hard questions. You got to get in there and let them understand that not only do you what you're talking about, but what is this strategy? How is this strategy going to work for me? Because a lot of people, they want to overpromise, underdeliver. And then the problem with SEO also where it's gotten a bad rep is a lot of people tell people it's going to take 6-9 months to get traction. And I've personally seen companies where their whole business model is not about the clients. Literally, they probably have 20 salespeople. They only have maybe 2 people actually in the SEO department because their business model is sell the package, draw them out for 6 to 9 months until they get so fed up and upset with no results, they cancel the contract. But at that point, you got 9 months worth of money. All the money you made, you didn't invest back into SEO or their company. You invested into the sales team. So what they just did is for every, let's say you get 6 months out of this guy, well, in those 6 months, we generated another 10 of them, right? That is their business model. And it makes SEO look so bad, but people need to understand it is one of the most powerful tools you can use in your arsenal. And it's one of the most powerful tools, not only because of its effects, but the fact that it has longevity, right? You turn off the ad metrics today, you're done. You're not getting any ads. You're not getting any leads from there, but the SEO will continue to produce and continue to produce. And even let's say firm like you guys have solid SEO, you have multiple digital presences, but if you guys were to theoretically stop all your ads today, stop all your SEO today, right? You're not going to get any more leads through the ad campaigns, but you're still going to drive traffic. Probably with the establishment that you guys have, you could look at you guys getting probably more organic leads and traction for another probably 8 months to a year and a half before it starts really falling apart. And that is the beautiful aspect behind it. And Patrick, you have this wrapped so tight. You guys, you're really doing something in the industry that is changing the ways. What is the legacy? What is the future outside of getting obviously more and more locations in Mississippi? But what's the future for Richard Schwartz, and what's the future for you?
Yeah. Well, the nice thing is still being in my 50s. I hope the good Lord has me around for a long time, but it's really kind of looking to the next generation. I mean, ultimately, we have a bunch of young attorneys, and it's being able to mentor them and help them grow so that at the end of the day, when it's my time and the other partner's time to pass the baton on, I know that I'm leaving the firm in hands that are continue the tradition and the mission and the culture and really the care. I mean, that's really the key is that I want to make sure that the next generation that ultimately takes over leadership of the firm, and hopefully that's down the road. I still got a daughter in high school. I got to be around for a while. But at the end of the day, you want to be able to invest in your people. Because if you're not investing in your people so that they can become the next leaders of the law firm, then when you're done, when you hang up the cleats and you walk out of the courtroom or film your last commercial, it's just the great unknown. So you invest in your people so that they understand what we've spent 44 years, hopefully 54 years or 64 years, however long it is before I hang it up, that they are like, okay, we know exactly the legacy. We know what we are walking into. When someone becomes a Los Angeles Laker, they know the history of that franchise. They know what Magic Johnson did, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Kobe did, and they know what is expected of them to be able to represent the purple and gold. And that's what I want. I want people to be able to know what it is to represent this law firm, to understand what one call that's all means, and more so what it means to help people. It's not just filming a commercial, it's not being on the radio, it's not being fortunate enough to be asked by you to be on a podcast, but it's giving, it's helping people make a recovery as our civil justice system allows. But it's all the other things. It's the charitable endeavors we do. It's the Halloween safety talks we do to students across the state of Mississippi. It's the animal shelters we're involved with, all those things, because those all encompass the mentality and the mission of Schwartz and Associates. And so you've got to be able to build that from the ground up. That doesn't come from the top down. That comes from the ground up organically within the firm, that people see me doing it, the marketing team do it, but they see our intake person who volunteers at the Children's Hospital, where we've been a founding sponsor for 15 years now. So it's all those things that you have to teach and pass on to people so that the mission can continue forward when your days are done.
That is so beautiful in its whole ideology. You know, people don't look at the impact of a firm like yours, right? You guys are impacting the communities. You guys are a beacon of hope in the actual state of Mississippi. You know, you guys are community leaders. And it's sometimes, some people may say this is harsh, but it's your duty and it's your obligation and responsibility to ensure that the people that you serve are protected. That community that you guys are giving back. Remember, that same community is who your clients are. They're the reasons that the firm is growing, because without clients, obviously, firms don't grow. Unfortunately, we don't want more people to crash their cars, but that's the reality of it. But Patrick, you are probably one of the sharpest minds I have ever met in the legal field. I think that, you have a good, very, very long future ahead of you. And I'm pretty sure, if we were to talk in a couple of years, you probably would have opened up 10 more locations, if not in Mississippi and other states. We're going to wrap it up a little bit now, but we're going to have a lightning
Okay.
round. And that lightning round is a couple of questions that are a little bit change of the topic, but on the topic, right?
That is great. And of course, it's hard for a lawyer to have a lightning round tour, and we like to talk. So that's hard. You got to have a buzzer, is what you should have for me. To me, the most important, it's hands down, you have to be able to read people. You've got to have that skill. And that is generally, you're either born with it or you're not. You've got to be able to read jurors. You got to be able to read your client. You got to be able to read the defendant, the defense experts. You have to be able to read people to be able to know how do you have to attack them? How do you have to question them? Because you can't have the same tactics for every person. That's not how we are. We're all wired differently. So you have to be able to read to know, do I go in hard on this person? Do I do the soft approach on this one? Am I friendly? Am I angry? It's just all those different ways. You have to be able to read people, plain and simple.
That's a great segue. The next question: what do you read, study, or reflect on to sharpen your edge? Legally, as a leader, where would you say, what is a book that you've read in the past couple of years that's really has transformed your thought and would help other business leaders, firm owners really get a good grasp on this whole growth and expansion concept?
Yeah, it's great. A book that actually sticks with me from college, which is many moons ago, believe it or not, is The Leadership Traits of Attila the Hun. That's an actual book, and actually
It's actually a very good book. I
he
know it.
did a report on that. That's always stuck with me. A book that was just recently given to me last week that I've started to read is a book called Finish Empty by Jason Curry. I was fortunate enough to hear him speak last week. It's really kind of designed for a sports team. He's a sports guy, so it comes from a sports mentality. But that applies to every single business. That applies to you with GrowthX. That applies to us. That applies to whether you are working at the local five and dime, whether you have the local plumbing company. So that book is, and it's an easy read. That's great about it. But that book is really, really good. And that's the thing. I get people that give me books all the time, and I love it. I love to read. I wish it's something my children would like. Unfortunately, they're not readers. I'm the reader in the family. But I think you have to read just as much as you can. Books you like, some are really dry, and boy, those are hard. You got to power through those dry reads. But you have that highlighter in your hand, have those sticky notes so that you can dog ear pages and mark things. But I think it's vitally important that you read leadership books, whether they're business books, whether they're sports leadership books, whether they are SEO books, because there's lots of books about growing your law firm that people have written. I think all those are important, but I think you've got to read a variety. I mean, I love to read nonfiction. I just love reading about history. I think you learn lots of lessons from reading about history. I think that's really important. Read a lot about Dwight D. Eisenhower. I mean, General Eisenhower, of course, military background. I love what he did, but I think that's really important that you've got to have a cornucopia of different genres that you're reading to help give you a well-rounded view of what it takes to be a leader and ultimately what it's going to take to move your law firm, your plumbing company, a travel agency, whatever it may be, the business you're in forward.
You brought that up about Dwight D. Eisenhower. Actually, a great book that I had recently read is about J. Edgar Hoover. It kind of goes back into that reading aspect. Edgar Hoover was a man of many traits. He did a lot of things in his career that could be questionable. One of the things that really stood out is that one of the philosophies that he stuck on was pretty much by The Prince by Machiavelli. He was very, very in tune with, deception, very in tune in how to portray himself in certain scenarios to leverage, on top of others what is needed. And it's not always, when you look at it in scenarios like that, people think negative, but that's not always how it is. When you're running a business and you're looking for expansion, having key data points so that way when to strike and when to actually position yourself correctly so that way your business is launched forward, understanding what is going on, competitor analysis, all of these are extremely valid points to focus on. Now, I have something a little bit looser up. Mississippi comfort food that powers you through long hours and just something that you love at the end of the day.
Well, I've got a sweet tooth. That's really the only reason why I go to the gym. Man, some peach cobbler from Mississippi with fresh vanilla ice cream. There is nothing better about that. But I will say we make some of the best fried catfish. Most people don't realize Mississippi is the catfish capital of the world. So we make a mean fried catfish in Mississippi, which is absolutely amazing.
Oh, I love catfish and I definitely love peach cobbler. Right? I'm gonna have to go to the gym just thinking about it.
I feel like I gained 5 pounds just giving that an answer.
Well, Patrick, that was powerful. From serving the nation to serving your clients, the clarity and consistency you lead with this is a blueprint for legal excellence. He's the best personal injury attorney I have spoken to in so many years. He's growing a firm exponentially year after year, month after month. I mean, his focus is forward every step of the way. He's building his team, he's structuring it, he's leading it like a general. For our listeners, if you've been injured, confused about your rights, or just want to see what real client advocacy looks like, visit www.onecall. That's one call. That's all. And Patrick, where can our listeners find you outside of there? Like, if they want to really learn more about your firm, if they're dealing with a case, maybe they have a current attorney that maybe they want to get rid of because they don't feel like they're getting represented correctly. How can they reach out to you,
Yeah,
realistically?
absolutely. The nice thing is we've got the same number whether you're in central Mississippi or North Mississippi. So you're in central Mississippi at 601-988-8888. If you're in North Mississippi, it's 662-988-8888. And like you said, the website, onecall.ms, you can reach out to any of us there and learn a whole lot more about the law firm.
And for our firmers who's listening, if you're looking to elevate your marketing, automate your operations, and scale with chaos or without chaos, check out GrowthX, the engine behind firms like $100 million results, $10 million in ad spend management. And really, for the next year, our goal is to hit over $300 million in revenue for our clients combined. If you're growth minded, if you're looking for scalability, but most importantly, sustainability, you can find us at growthxmarketing.ai. We're here for you every step of the way. If you like today's episode, please subscribe, leave a 5-star review, leave a comment, and they'll all be answered. Until then, let's wrap up today's Success and Excess. And guys, understand, if you want your firm to grow, if you want your business to grow, it takes another level of inspiration. And look at a guy like Patrick Wooten. Be inspired by his journey. Be inspired by what he's done. And follow his footsteps, because this guy is a mover and shaker, and you're probably going to see him on more than one billboard in more than one state, all over the country, on the TV ads. We have a star in the making right here. Thank you. Always tune in, and we'll see you again. Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Own your growth. Scale with systems powered by GrowthX. Subscribe to Success in Excess for those who lead with precision and scale with purpose.